So Tamara is one of the people who live in Cape Town, Sully, where the DA is proud of its governance record. It says people there have complained that they've been victims, in fact, of evictions due to a housing crisis. When they erect shacks and settlements, they're then removed. She wants to know how that approach that you're applying in the Western Cape, in Cape Town, is working.
Well, thank you very much. I think the first thing we need to be addressing is why people leave where they're living to come into CBDs or places of economic opportunities. That's where we need to then be starting. Because I don't think that anybody leaves the Eastern Cape and decide, which I'm going to live there out of, out of the blue. It is issues of the economy that we now need to then be addressing. We also now, when we start talking about where people settle, are people settling in safe spaces? Talking about places that are flooding. And people don't want to be settled far away from economic opportunities. And these are things that we now need to be addressing. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in a space where government has to admit that it will not be able to then build everybody a house. And therefore, if you're not going to be able to then build everybody else a house, what is then the alternative? And we have been saying for the longest of time, are we able to then start putting in place systems where we're able to roll out service stands and be able to then get also economic opportunities, decentralized, that people can get jobs closer to where they stay.
But people have been moving, there we go, people have been moving to urban centres. It's not unique to the Western Cape. The same happens in Gauteng for years, in fact. And we know they're going to continue to do so because of the uneven spread of economic opportunities. Why have you not been able to plan sufficiently to accommodate that?
Well, I'm not responding to the Cape Town issue. I'm talking to a South African.
Well, you're here as the DA rep, and that's why I'm putting it to you.
That's fine. And I'm responding to a South African problem. I'm not responding to a Cape Town problem. You go to Alexander, you're sitting with the same situation. You have people in Madala hostels that have, flocked into Madala hostels as an example. And it's a big problem. You have people that are flocking into floodlines, into areas where they might be able to then be as close to public transport to be able to then to get to job opportunities. And this is why I'm saying you can talk about the problem of settlement, but until you address the economic challenges and the decentralization of the economy, so that we're able to then reach people from where Floyd is coming in Venda to people that are in the Eastern Cape.
Okay, Floyd, you're itching to come in here. Let's allow the EFF to come in.
It's a joke again.
Yes, let's allow the EFF to come in.
Yeah, what I was saying is that we now need to then address the issue.
No, I hear you on what you're saying about sorting out the other issues that lead to the uneven spread of people moving. The EFF had said a few years ago, in fact, that where there is vacant land and people need housing, then they must set up home there. Is that still the message?
No, look, I think let's respond to the question that she has asked as to what is going to happen with the homelessness that defines a lot of our people in the urban and peri-urban spaces. One, there's levels of unemployment in South Africa. Stats SA has just illustrated that we've got upward of 11 million people who are looking for jobs and cannot find them. And we've got high levels of poverty. And what are the primary and fundamental systemic causes of those? It's of a stagnant economy which has not been growing. National Treasury says in the budget this year that for the past 12 years, the economy has been growing at 0.8% on average. So once you do not have the expansion of the productive forces, a lot of people will not be able to find sustainable income to build homes for themselves. And such that even the interventions which government will give through low-cost housing is not adequate to could meet the otherwise very huge demand of homelessness that defines a lot of our people. And of course, there will be influx into urban centers because what the ANC has failed to do since 1994 is to undo the spatial segregation that was designed by apartheid and the manner in which it was dealt with that. Apartheid was primarily a spatial problem, of course an economic reality, and racism and political problem as well. But spatially, the ANC has failed to reverse the consequences of apartheid, where white people stayed in certain areas and black people stayed in certain areas, where the economy was only concentrated in certain urban centers, and everyone else was forced to going into those urban centers to look for jobs. So what we have to do
is to grow
the economy.
And I want to go back to that earlier question that I asked, because one of the things that the EFF had said on addressing landlessness and the issues around housing is that if land is vacant and you are able to settle there, Is that still
So as part of our land program and campaign, which was a very progressive and successful program, by the way, where it said that because the spaces where black people stay in the peri-urban areas, be it Elias Motsoaledi informal settlement, be it Deep Sloot, be it Alexander, it's highly congested. The population density in those areas is far much more higher than anywhere where it's acceptable for human beings to stay in such areas. You'll find one stand, by the way, which is reserved possibly for like 3-4 members, household family, with more than 50 people staying in such spaces. If you go to Alexander today, and then you check those toilets which are put by a government there, and then you just check the number of cleaners who are listed to clean those toilets there, you will find more than 30 people, meaning that that toilet is utilized by more than 100 people. And that is standard in almost all the informal settlements, due to the failure of the post-1994 government to reverse the injustices of apartheid at a spatial level.
Let's ask the post-1994 government. Mr. Motsoaledi, the ANC has been in governance in South Africa since 1994. At the moment, the housing backlog, some of the numbers say in this country, is beyond 2 million, in fact, which is much more than what it was when you became the party of government. What is the solution now to the issue of people who now are setting up informal settlements because they're simply tired of waiting? Will you service those areas and simply allow them to live there?
Well, the truth of the matter, Tembegile, is that urban migration is a global phenomenon. It's happening all over the world. People are moving to urban areas. And when they do so, they need housing. The truth of the matter is that we are the only country, as far as I know, we started developing RDP houses, building houses for people without them paying anything. It's happening nowhere in the world. And 4 million have already been built, which means a start has been made. Quite a number of people who come to urban areas looking for houses. Yes, it has been reported they do have houses back home, but because there are no jobs there, in fact, houses which some of them never build for themselves, even RDP houses, because there was a problem of database. So there are people who leave the RDP houses to come to the urban areas to look for jobs. And of course, they have not been planned for. So I do accept what Freud is saying about the stagnation of the economy. That is one of the solutions. But I do not think there's any way in which the issue of urban migration can be stopped.
Your minute is up, sir. Is it stagnation or simply because there's been a failure to plan? What is the solution?
Well, it is stagnation. It is definitely.
As a result of what? A failure to plan?
No.
Or not understanding the problem?
Economic stagnation in the country because of structural factors of the economy, which you
The House seems to disagree.
Well, they are disagreeing because it's me. But this is the truth. That the economy, even some of the people who are living have said so before, that we need to change structural factors of the economy. I know Kosapi has said that many times. Because of those structural factors, we are not able to let the economy get moving. But if you look at our manifesto, we have started to put things and plans there.
Yes. We're 10 minutes in and I'm already sweating. I'm looking for the Socio-Economic Rights Institute because they're among the people who are part of this broadcast tonight. Ma'am, if I can ask you to stand up because you have a question.
Well, I'm here with Lerato Marolo from Slovo Park. It's an informal settlement in the south of Johannesburg. It was established in 1991. And to date, despite a court judgment that ordered the city of Johannesburg to upgrade the informal settlement, Slovo Park today is still waiting. They received electricity in 2018, but the fact remains they're still waiting. Politicians come to Slovo Park frequently. Recently, it was the premier who promised that he'd return, but there's nothing. I think what is absent is a comment on what we're going to do about land redistribution. Unfortunately, informal settlements are a product of landlessness. They're a product of our history, as the EFF has noted, but they are also an urbanization issue, as the ANC has noted. So ultimately, in addition to the economic factors, we can't hide away from the fact that land redistribution is needed. And currently that is the problem with Slovo Park, where the city and province both don't know what to do with acquiring the land that is apparently owned by the province.
Okay, thank you. Quick one. I'll give you each a sentence to respond, Mr. Motsoaledi, and then Mr. Shivambu, and then you, Mr. Msimang.
Well, on the issue of the land, we agree wholeheartedly. And you are aware that we also subscribe to the issue of land, to redistribute land, and also to make sure that there's the law on compensation which has been followed, that we do not actually support it, as you know. On that one, we are together with EFF, except that when it came to voting, they deserted us.
Okay.
It has been happening now. They deserted us, but we are still pursuing that. We know it needs 2/3. We know that one day, as black people, realize that we need land and do that.
Floyd, your take. Will that one day be in 30 years if you're not in government?
Do you know that in 1996, the white paper on land reform had set 1999 as the due date for redistribution of 30% of South Africa's land? It's 30 years later now. It's 25 years since 1999. Not even 10% of the land has been redistributed from those who are occupying it through colonialism and settler barbaric colonialism, because of an incapable, directionless government of the ANC. And when we then came as the economic freedom fighters, we say that this piece by piece redistribution of land has not worked because it, in majority of cases, is faced with litigation of people are saying that you cannot take my farm, you must take these ones instead of this. Why taking mine? Why prioritizing mine instead of the other one? Then we say that let us do to the land resources what was done to the petroleum and mineral resources, to water resources, what the People's Republic of China is doing, of getting the land to be under the custodianship of the state so that we can be able to allocate it to everyone equitably representative and reflective of the demographics of South Africa.
And that's where you and
that is our position. That is it. Of course, then the ANC had initially agreed to our position, and then they later on said that the only land that can be taken without compensation is barren land, is rotten land, is land which is not strategic. That is why we voted against what they had proposed.
The difference was in terms of when you say that land, for example, that is taken or redistributed or meant for redistribution, and the state should be the custodian. And I think that was the core difference between the EFF and the ANC.
Yes, on the expropriation without compensation, we fully agree. The difference, yes,
is on custodianship.
When they said all the land must be owned by the state only, meaning individuals can't own land.
Right.
That is where we differ.
DA, you don't want any of it. Solly, you don't want any of it.
There can be an ongoing discussion and debate about whether land expropriation without compensation is actually legal or not legal. It's actually there in the constitution of the country. They haven't been able to then adequately use it, and instead, where they've been able to then use it, it has been used to advantage those that are politically connected, and it has actually then resulted in a whole lot of corruption. So that is the first thing.
So you don't agree?
Hang on. The second thing is this year, we haven't really addressed the real issue. If the issue was all about land, I promise you people would not be living Limpopo, people will not be living KZN, people will not be living in the Eastern Cape. They are living and going into where the economy is. People are chasing more the economy, and we need to then address that. Once we address the issue of the economy, we can then talk about where people are settling.
They're both looking at you in disbelief, by the way. This is the big debate. When we return, we'll talk about health. When we return, we'll talk about health and the NHI. You're watching The Big Debate. And Tato is here with us in studio today on The Big Debate. Tato, what is your question as someone who is currently in need of cancer treatment, but the backlog is so long?
Since I've waited 4 years for radiation, been diagnosed with cancer, and I had 3 reoccurrences already where I'm standing as today and living off chemo. So my question goes to the former Minister of Health. Why is there a deadlock when it comes to the radiation department? Why isn't the Department of Health not using the 784 million that Treasury took out for radiation patients only? Then the two more questions that I'm sending to EFF and DA. They go as in, what it is that you will do when you get into power to help cancer patients get treatment in time. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Tato. Let's start with the ANC. Why are people like Tato still waiting 4 years on for cancer treatment when it's so urgent?
Exactly. Tembekile, let me put it this way. She was actually outlining why we need NHI. Definitely. Because, yes, figures don't lie. Oh, no, you can laugh, but that's a fact. Figures don't lie. Let me give you the facts. She is waiting for radiotherapy, chemo in this country. I can tell you, there are many private hospitals that are empty which have got that. But she's looking for it only in the private sector. With NHI, we want to use all the facilities. And when I say figures don't lie, let me give you the figures. According to the World Health Organization, if a country is to run a good healthcare system for its citizens, it must spend at least 5% of its GDP on health. In South Africa, we are at 8.5% of the GDP. Europe is at 9%, which means we are more or less in the same bracket.
But because of corruption?
But why? No, you see?
Because of corruption, we're not getting there.
Let's allow him to finish.
Spending more, but because of corruption, we're not
Let's allow him to finish and then allow you to respond, Solly.
In that 8.5%, 51% of that goes to only 14% of the population. They share 51% of the GDP on health. And 86% of the population, that included, must share 49%. In terms of figures, it's 280 billion rand spent in the private sector for 14% of the population against 270 billion spent for the remaining 86% of the population. You can't have a health system like that.
Solly,
that's why we need to change it.
The minute is up. Let me get you to respond, because the DA even this week has been saying the NHI will in fact be the death knell of healthcare in this country. What is your solution?
It's not only the DA that is saying.
Well, I'm asking the DA because the DA is here.
Even the health professionals are saying that. That's the first thing.
So what?
The second thing is that people that are paying medical aid are paying double tax. Let's start there.
No.
You are already paying tax in terms of your income and everything else that you're paying, and you've decided because your state is failing, let me go and pay and get private medical assistance, right? Like we're doing with safety and security. You're failing. You're having a police force that is failing. That's why you end up going again to go and look for private security in areas that you're staying in. And instead of them addressing the problem, and she didn't go. The insight was she didn't go to a private hospital. She was seeking for it in a public hospital. They haven't built the capacity in public hospitals for that. The last 30 years, you must accept that you failed. You failed to build capacity in this hospital. You failed to address. I can tell you right now, I've been to all hospitals in Gauteng. None of them meet the OHS standards. None of them. They failed to address the issue of shortages of medication. They failed to address the issues of shortage of the infrastructure upgrade. But more importantly, they've failed to even ensure that you have enough human capital to deal with the shortage.
Is the NHI a cover for the ANC's failures at the most basic level when it comes to provision of healthcare? And if so, what does the EFF think it would do better if elected come May 29th?
Now, look, firstly, we must state that as the economic freedom fighters, we are for universal access to healthcare facilities and quality healthcare from primary to tertiary levels. Whatever forms of healthcare responses which our people need, they must be given, including the chemotherapy that our sister is talking about. It must be provided at quality level by the state. But the manner in which the NHI was signed yesterday was opportunism, was just electioneering by the ANC. Because they know that it won't come into action immediately. You know, like Chapter 3 of the National Health Insurance still says that you must still go and set up a health fund, a National Health Insurance Fund, appoint a board, and that board must still go and look for resources, such that those who are looking for access to the private health care for free must be paid by that particular fund. The NHI has been signed yesterday, but our people still do not have access to private health care. But they are creating an impression in South Africa that since Ramaphosa yesterday opportunistically signed the NHI, now healthcare is equal. It's opportunism of the highest order. In the manner that it was just electioneering which was narrow. Our approach to healthcare is an emphasis on primary healthcare, which must be responsive, must be preventive of the diseases that can be contained before they require any form of hospitalization. That is the manner in which we must be handling the healthcare situation.
Your minute is up. Dr. Msolodi, you've achieved a miracle here. You've got the DA and the EFF to agree on your failings. And the sense is that what you're basically doing with the NHI is that you're having the baby shower before the egg has been fertilized.
No, it is quite common these days that when you do something good, they call it opportunism for elections. The first policy of NHI was passed in the ANC in 2007. We've been working on this. Fortunately, I'm the first minister.
And when was the legislation passed?
I'm the first minister who worked on this issue. It took many years. It's not something that we woke up tomorrow and say we must do because...
When was the law passed and why was it signed yesterday?
The second thing I want to say, it might be good for you, Floyd, if you were to listen, is that...
Let's allow Dr. Msolodi to finish because we're almost out of time for this segment.
People choose only one aspect. Healthcare anywhere in the world has got 6 pillars.
Okay.
Yes, all those pillars must be satisfied to run a good healthcare system. One of the pillars is healthcare financing. It is central. Human resources is one of the pillars. Healthcare information, medicine.
Your minute is up, sir.
But the central one is healthcare financing. And I've put figures here on the table.
Right.
You're not gonna, there's no political party that can do that.
Your minute is up.
If the healthcare financing is the way it is.
Your minute is up, so I have to stop you before I'm accused of behaving like the Speaker of Parliament. This is the big debate. We're still talking about multiple things throughout this next hour. In fact, when we come back, we'll talk about basic income. The basic income grant has been the subject of much conversation, especially since the pandemic. We'll ask if these 3 big parties would form a government of national coalition, for instance, and what that would mean for the future of politics in this country. You're watching The Big Debate. Welcome back to The Big Debate. We have the ANC, DA and EFF tonight as we continue to talk about the future, or the politics, in fact, of this country, the election coming up with the 3 major parties in South Africa. And Motsidisi is here with us on The Big Debate in studio from the Free State. Motsidisi, your question for the panel.
My question for the panel, it's straight and forward. I want this time, because they're always preaching, so we are not running a daycare here. I want implementation of the universal basic income grant. So I want the parties to answer me, because they know about this issue. When and how? When are they starting with the implementations? Because they know that it's actually important since why they established the SRD.
Okay, let me start with you, Mr. Msolodi. When, how, and how much will a basic income grant be under the ANC government?
No, we have accepted it long ago, as you know. And we have already said we'll build up on the 350 rand that is already built.
Let's just pause, because the longer we take, then we don't get to hear from either of your representatives here today.
That the matter is being discussed, and we have already agreed that there is going to be basic income grant. I'm not able to give you the date, but we've already said we have made a start with the 350 rand, and we are going to build up from there. It's not a question that we are still debating. We want to implement it, and we are going to do so.
By the way, just a quick one. We did tell, in fact, all the political parties that they were allowed to bring their supporters into studio tonight, just in case you're wondering, because I know there are the blue shirts behind me. They're not the only people who are invited. But Mr. Msolodi, the question as you were speaking was when and how much still?
No. Those things are still being worked on. I don't have the figures here.
How much? Oh, so you're still working on it?
Yes, definitely.
EFF?
No, look, people claim that the EFF is populist. There are 3 forms of grants which we are going to focus and pay maximal, optimal attention on. One is the child support grant, which we say must be doubled because children cannot help themselves. They cannot work. Old age grant, which must be doubled from its current rates. But also there must be graduates grant as well for those who have graduated.
Let him finish.
And we are going to create full employment for everyone else who's looking for jobs, because this 350 which they're bragging about is not dealing with the poverty question. People are given 350. They receive it at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock, it's finished already. They cannot do anything with it. So we are clear in terms of what is the solution to the poverty crisis in South Africa. That is creation of sustainable quality jobs that must be given to young people, not just some stipend of 350.
Your minute is up, sir. Mr. Msimanga. ANC is still working on the figures and date of implementation. EFF says, let's double these grants. Let's create the sort of employment that would allow people to sustain themselves. What would the DA do about the number of people who need this basic income grant if you were to come into government at the end of this month?
Well, first of all, we know that the ANC wants to cancel the 350 grants to start off with, because it is actually leaked recording that says that we want to cancel this, but it will be detrimental if we do it before the election. So we already know that as a point of departure. That's the
Let's use your minute to talk about you.
Let me also then get to this. First of all, you need to understand that you need to be able to then have a tax base that is able to then sustain the grants that you're going to talk to. The fact that we don't have a plan coming from this side to create jobs that are going to be able to then provide taxes that are going to be able to then pay going forward. So what we are saying is we now need to then ensure that we are going to then invest more on the infrastructure that is going to attract investment that can get jobs going. Then you'll have less people that are dependent on grants. You'll have more people that are contributing to the tax that will be able to then sustain themselves. And this is something that we need to be looking at. But we have also been saying, look at your basic foodstuffs that at this point in time is still keeping people unable to.
Your minute is up. Quick one. You didn't answer my question.
Yes.
I hear you on the investment, but to the people sitting here who are unemployed, is what you are saying that they have to wait for investment because the DA is not going to give them a basic income grant?
Well, we are saying there's a number of things that we are saying.
But you're not giving. No. My question is, you're not going to give them a basic income grant.
No, they don't support grant.
We're supporting the grant, but we are saying, no, you will even cancel it because there's no plan and no money that you're going to be getting. So we are saying, we are going to support it, and we have been saying there's 650 that we are talking to. It's there in our manifesto. We're talking about the 650, but we're saying more than that. We are saying cut the corruption, cut the spending on VIP. You will have much more money to invest so that you can create jobs. That's what we've been saying.
I want to come to Lindiwe Mazibuko. You have been in politics. You are now, in fact, working in the leadership space. From what you've heard now, in these conversations we've heard tonight, how do you make sense of this moment in South Africa?
I've got a mic on, I think.
Oh, yes, you do, actually.
I think this is possibly the most exciting moment in democratic politics in our country. We are finally at a stage where we can envisage other political parties starting to come into governance. We're talking about coalitions at national level, we're talking about coalitions at provincial level. And finally, I think for opposition parties, it's no longer a question of just saying what the ANC can't do. It's about saying what they are going to do when they're in power. Because power is closer for them now than it has ever been. And I think that's an incredibly healthy thing. I think in a democracy like ours, in a political system like ours, that tends towards multi-party governments, this is a wonderful development. It also means it's going to kill apathy. Political parties won't be able to just sit on their haunches and wait for their supporters to rally to the polls and get a majority every single time. It's now going to be a requirement for political parties to field proper candidates. Right, to field candidates who are not criminals, candidates who are competent, candidates who can preside over a budget. The national budget in this current financial year is 2.6 trillion rand. 2.6 trillion rand. Which political parties are fielding candidates that are going to be able to preside in a responsible, ethical manner over that kind of
And your minute is up. When we come back, we will pause for a moment and then we'll talk about coalitions. Don't go away. Welcome back. officially to the big debate. That was Taz Nkonzo with the unique reflections on this year's elections. Now, let's come to a question on many people's minds now. In previous elections, it was expected, right, that the ANC would have a majority nationally. Now, it appears that might not necessarily be the case. So, a coalition government, some say, is a distinct possibility. We know all the parties say that they're running to win this year, but let's be real here. You may actually have to work harder and together, right, as political parties. Tats referenced your advert, Solly. The burning of the flag, it stirred up a lot of emotions. The metaphor, you say, is what would happen to South Africa if these two parties, the ANC and EFF, worked together. But are you better? What would you do, basically, if you had to be in coalition? Because looking at the numbers, some say you're not going to get an outright majority.
Well, we are working with like-minded people who are all constitutionalists to start off with. People who are looking at the Constitution and says we have to protect it. That's the first.
The members of the pact.
Yes. The second thing is people who are saying we need an open market system. We cannot have a government that decides who to hire, who to fire, how to control the market. We need a market that is able to then determine how are we going to drive the economy. They have been, they failed dismally to do that. The EFF is not going to do that. The EFF is actually a repellent to attracting investment into South Africa. And their policies are actually proven to have failed. Venezuela and wherever you might want to think about it, they failed. We are saying we want people who are going to be able to help us to attract the investment that we need in this country, to get people out of poverty, to get people, and to give people the quality of life that they so deserve.
Okay. ANC, coalitions.
Yeah.
The DA says if you two pair up, we're all doomed.
Yeah, no, you be careful when you talk about coalitions. Yeah, because I'm sitting next to Floyd and somebody will burn a flag immediately. Because I'm sitting on our side. Yes, I noticed that they formed this moonshot pact to shoot the moon or whatever, because none of them is confident of governing alone, of governing the country. We have been governing it and we will continue. And we want to. So we are not.
Let's let him finish.
We are not planning on.
Guys, if you keep interrupting, unfortunately, I will have to, or fortunately, I'll have to give him more time to speak. And he's got a minute. Continue, sir.
Yes, we are not planning on any coalition whatsoever. We are planning on continue to govern the country, as we have been doing for the past 30 years. So we have never even sat down and pointed to anybody and said this is going to be our coalition partner, because we are confident that we can govern alone. Those who want coalitions, they are not even confident of themselves, for that matter. So that's why we have not put anything on the table about the coalition.
Floyd, is the ANC your preferred partner for coalition?
Let's deal with this thing which Soli is saying first.
Okay.
That he says that the policies that were in pursuit of have never worked anyway. The People's Republic of China is the biggest economy in the world now. It is the fastest growing economy since 1970. It has never been seen in the history of world development where an economy grew that faster and much more stably. And it's led by a communist party with socialist principle. All land is under the custodianship of the state in China. I know that you are led by semi-military traits, so you would not have any form of qualification or order. But don't tolerate that level. I'm talking about. You've got the John Steinhazens and all
I have 2 degrees.
No, but I'm talking about John Steinhazen, John Steinhazen and all those people that are in parliament. All those whites don't have any qualification. I sat with them in committees, by the way. And then I know qualification. And they know nothing. Now, our contestation of elections is to contest with the aiming of outright victory.
Okay.
We're going to contest elections to win as the economic freedom fighters. We'll deal with coalitions if we have not been elected, but our principles will never be compromised when we deal with negotiations.
But ultimately, is it for you a coalition? Is it for you a coalition with the ANC that would make the most sense, especially given the chaos and the turbulence you experienced in Ekurhuleni as a case study?
Our target, Tembekile, is the 29th of May, where the EFF is going to record an outright victory.
That's the ideal situation.
We're not bothered
Minister
about
of Finance.
Okay.
We're not bothered about
Okay.
coalitions.
Pick one. Sorry, no preamble.
not bothered
You
about it.
have the moonshot pact going, but the problem with that, people say, is there are too many cooks in the kitchen, potentially. Even at the beginning, some are already accusing your leader of wanting to assert himself as the leader of that grouping. How do you manage that if you become a government together?
Well, John has said it very, very clear. He's not married to the idea of
Semi-literate
him being,
John.
a president. He said we need to then look, reimagine what South Africa looks like beyond the ANC. What are we going to do then to then get there? And then we can talk about the who will then come afterwards. That's what we've been saying.
I want to take quick questions from young people. There's a lady over here. I'll take you first, ma'am. Let me come over here, and I can start with you. Question from you? Yes, please stand.
On your own.
Okay.
I'll hold it for you.
Okay. I think you guys are exhausting. And I think what you're failing to understand is that the reason that there's talks about coalitions in this country is because none of your parties are capable of leading. What you said about the basic income grant is not good enough. We need to know when and how you're going to implement it. You speak of using the SRD, but the SRD as it is failing. The DA, you guys used to be against the child support grant. Now you're supporting it miraculously. But what you are failing to understand is that,
Very briefly, please.
Yes, you speak about supporting the basic income, but your basic income is very conditional. You speak about focusing on infrastructure and so on. But what you're not understanding is that people are hungry now, people need to eat now, and there's a lot of children dying of malnutrition and hunger in this country.
Thank you.
And you need to implement and give us answers when and how.
Thank you. I'm going to shuffle across and come to you, sir, if you can just come closer to me. Very briefly, 30 seconds or less.
All right. I wanted to firstly just say this as a statement to Ntatum Tswaledi. You guys have been running the country alone for 30 years, and look how that turned out. Let's just start there. But secondly, I just wanted to ask both the EFF and the ANC, there are talks of wanting to have a universal basic income grant. I think with the EFF, you guys want to have 4,500 Rand for graduates, if I'm not mistaken. My question is, where exactly are you guys going to get the money? Because there are already talks of the NHI in general.
Thank you. I'm going to take more questions throughout the broadcast. I'm going to come back. Let's have two ladies over here. Ma'am, you were first. The more time you waste heckling, then I don't get to you. I'll hold it for you.
Okay. So, let me speak louder.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and hasten my questioning round,
Please.
right? And I'm going to just touch on 2 points, right? What I've noticed here is that all of the parties are capitalizing on the shortcomings of one another instead of how to improve South Africa as a whole, which is wrong. Second point that I'd like to focus is, although what they plan to do is of utmost importance, but the pivotal question is, what have they successfully done for the country, regardless of them being the governing a party? So this is a question that I would like the representatives to answer is, what have they successfully done? And what will they continue to do for South Africans? Because we're tired of hearing of promises and what could be done based off of the shortcomings of other parties.
Thank you. By the way, please stand, ma'am. You'll be the last one. We have a second hour, and that's just your questions. Ma'am?
My question...
I'll hold it for you.
Okay, actually, I don't have...
I'll hold it for you. Thank you.
Sorry. I don't have a question. I have a statement to make. What we need is leaders that work on themselves to become the best version of themselves in order to treat people well. What we need is leaders that says, if I can't live in that condition, I'm not going to let somebody else live in that condition. What we need is leaders that treat people the way they want to be treated and uplift their team instead of uplifting themselves. We need that. We don't need education. We need self-knowledge, self-wisdom to treat people the way you want to be treated. That's what we need.
Thank you very much. When the big debate continues, a final word from our panel, including responses from what we heard just now. This is the big debate.